Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the first meeting of the new year of the Arts and Culture Commission. May we have a roll call, please?
Commissioners Deaver.
Here.
Gregorian.
Here.
Lee.
Here.
Chairperson Kavanian.
Here.
For the record, Commissioner Derhovanesian is absent. The agenda for the January 17th meeting was posted on the bulletin board outside City Hall on January 11th, 2013.
Next item, please.
Item 2, consent items. At A, approval of regular meeting minutes from December 20th, 2012.
Okay. Are there any comments? Any changes?
I move to approve.
Second.
All right. Roll call, please.
Commissioners Deaver.
Yes.
Gregorian.
Yes.
Lee.
Yes.
Chairperson Kavanian.
Yes. Next item, please.
Item 3, introductions and presentations. At A, Library Arts and Culture events presented by Chuck Wyke, Community Relations Manager.
All right. Happy New Year, Chairperson Kavanian, Commissioners, and City staff. I'm here to give you just a brief update on arts and culture events programming by the City of Glendale, specifically by the Library Arts and Culture Department. First, just a reminder that all of our, where'd it go? All of our physical sites will be closed for the Martin Luther King holiday. That's the entire weekend, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, January 19 through 21. Next up, Montrose, the little community to the north, part of Glendale. It's going to celebrate its centennial, and that's going to take place the weekend of February 23. And the Library Arts and Culture Department is working with the Montrose Verdugo Chamber of Commerce and the local historical societies to help highlight the community's 100-year anniversary. And to help start that celebration, we have a great program on Wednesday, January 23 at the Central Library with the filmmaker and author Robert Newcomb. He's put together a new book called Montrose, Images of America. It's a basic history of the community told in pictures. We'll have another event late in February, and our Montrose branch will host a couple of events Saturday the 23rd, including an opportunity for the community to bring in their historic pictures of Montrose, and we'll scan them up and make them part of our collection. Brand Library, as you know, is undergoing renovation. We're still progressing with that. So programming collection has moved down to the Central Library. In this month, January 26th, we're bringing back filmmaker Bob Berry. There was a documentary about photographer Bob Berry, documentary about his work. He calls it a jazzumentary. We're going to present that. So some of his images here is Nancy Wilson, Kenny Burrell. Here's the card for that, the little ad that runs on GTV6. Not only will we show the film, but two really stellar, well-known LA area guitarists are going to present a free concert. John Paisano and Barry Zweig is pictured there. Photo. Something new. Something a little different for us. We have, they are called the Beer Chicks, and they're two women who are authors, they're consultants, and they are considered experts in the foodie community on beer, and craft beer in particular. They're nationally known. They're going to talk about their new books. If you want to learn how to brew your own, come to the library on January 30th. And we'll have some fun there. There's a little off topic, but I wanted to get this in here. The D.D. Hirsch Mental Health Services is partnering with the library. They have a program called the Armenian Community Health and Wellness. They're bringing in a family therapist, a marriage counselor, who will present a program in Armenian dealing with depression and mental health. Just wanted to get the word out. That's February 6th, the Wednesday night at 6:30. Really an exciting program for us. serves our community well, I think. Friends of the Library continue their loading dock book sales on the second Saturday of every month. Next one is February 9 from 9 to noon. Again, Brand Library programming. We have Richard Wagner's Flying Dutchman on Saturday, February 9th. That's a talk by a representative from the Los Angeles Opera. And I'll talk about their production of The Flying Dutchman. A great program here. Heike Humbartson is going to come on Friday, February 22. He's a young filmmaker. You may know that he did a documentary film about composer Tigran Mansourian. We presented that at the library. He's going to come back with 2 short films. They are both in Armenian with English subtitles. One was shot in Armenia, the other was shot in Hollywood. And he's got some real interesting character development and stories. So finally, I have our website and our Facebook page there. I just want you to know February is a big month, particularly for our children's librarians. They'll bring art, music, storytelling to the children of Glendale. It's Valentine's Day, as you well know, and they incorporate a lot of the arts and crafts to help instill a love of reading in our youngest visitors. So there's our website and our Facebook page. Even if we're closed, you can find us. Thank you.
Mr. Weck, may I have a request or suggestion?
Sure.
With all these great programs that you have, is it possible if you could maybe put it in one page sheet of paper and give it to us at each meeting? Because, so I'm trying to follow up and make my notes.
I'd be happy.
I can hardly follow up, and I'm sure my fellow commissioners would love to have the exact details and probably participate in some of those.
Very happy to do that. I hope you will, tell our constituents in the city about these programs. So I'll work with Annette and make sure you have something in your packets that she sends out then, so you have it all beforehand.
That would be great. I would really appreciate it. And I would appreciate if you could give the list that you presented today to us sometime very soon so that we can, go to these meetings.
I'll get it to you today.
All right, great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very, very nice suggestion, actually. Thank you very much, Mr. Wyke. And actually, Heike Humbartson is a very good friend of mine, so I was pleasantly surprised to see him up there.
And the movie that he's made about Tigran Mansourian is, I haven't seen the movie, but Mansourian is one of the best composers that we've had. So
Absolutely.
I'm looking forward to that.
Okay. Next item, please.
Item 4, oral communications. Discussion is limited to items not on this agenda. Each speaker is allowed 5 minutes. The commission may question or respond to the speaker, but there will be no debate or decision. The commission may refer the matter to the city staff for investigation and report.
I have one card, Dick Heimbold.
Well, thanks for the opportunity. Chairman Kavanian, committee members. I've got a few copies of my one page that I'm going to talk about. Will I give them to you?
I passed a copy to the
You already
commissioners,
have.
yes.
Okay, in a nutshell, we got the,
Just a moment. Sir.
yes, it is.
Oh, right.
Okay. In that case, I'll sit down.
Well, actually, I was going to suggest that that we move that item next in terms of discussion so that Mr. Heimbold could speak and that we could allot probably the most amount of time on that, if that's okay with my colleagues. Yep.
No problem.
All right.
Shall I press on?
No, not yet.
Not yet.
Not yet. I'll call you right back up, I promise, Mr. Heimbold. Thank you. Thank you for your patience. So,
5A3.
That's what we're going to do.
yeah, let's jump to the next item at 5A3, please.
Okay.
Item 5, business agenda. At A3, review and recommend approval of arts and culture plan.
Okay, last month, staff presented a draft of the Arts and Cultural Plan for the Commission's review and discussion. The Commission did provide a lot of direction on specific areas below, and staff has revised the plan to incorporate these directives. Specifically, the Commission provided direction on the goals, whether or not they encompass the Commission's vision for arts and culture, some of the objectives and strategies on how to achieve these goals, community resources, what were some of the funding sources and community partners, as well as the allocation of the Urban Art Fund. The attached plan does incorporate these recommendations and changes, and I can quickly go through and just remind you what some of those changes and directions were. But to just jump ahead a little bit, the next step after the Commission reviews and recommends approval of the plan to the City Council, we would take this plan to the Council for their review and approval. A tentative date is scheduled for February 5th, but it may be pushed to February 12th, but I will update the community based on the City Council advance agenda. After the plan is approved, then we will staff will present a draft work plan for the 2013-2014 year for the Commission's review and discussion. So we will either hold a special meeting or we will continue that discussion at the February meeting. And that's where we get into the specifics of identifying priority programs and focus areas, as well as budgets and specific resources for that fiscal year. Now, I'm just moving through the plan quickly, just to remind you of some of the items. And I apologize for some reason when we I formatted this from a Word document to PDF. Some of the formatting got messed up, so I apologize for that. Didn't catch it, but I guess it's kind of a brain teaser. It kind of tells you what to expect on the next page. So in terms of the goals, one of the recommendations or the discussion points was for goal number 2, whether to use arts and culture to encourage community pride or community participation, and I believe the consensus was community participation, so I will make that change and we can present it with that correction to the City Council. Now, with goal number 1, there were a couple of additions. Objective 2 is recommended that we include creative businesses in promoting Glendale as an arts and cultural destination. And we also added a strategy C, which is to encourage collaboration among art organizations and with businesses. And in item number 3, objective number 3, I think one of the commissioners recommended that we also include arts organizations in that. So we're raising the visibility of Glendale artists, but also arts organizations. And I will make that change. And with goal number 2, we had included under Objective 1, Strategy C, encouraging community members to create stakeholder groups. The Commission felt that it was really important for community members to feel empowered to take the initiative to develop programs and projects and to also recommend policy directions. There was also the addition of Strategy C under Objective number 2, which is to encourage public art projects that involve neighborhoods, youth, and businesses. Again, it's to encourage community members to join together and develop some of those projects. Under goal number 3, we specified under Objective 1, Strategy C, facilitating the use of private venues in downtown and the creative corridor for arts and cultural activities. And we also specified under Objective number 2, enhancing arts and cultural programming opportunities throughout the city. So we have one focus area is downtown, the other would be the entire city. And we also added Strategy B, which is to continue to identify a lot of different facilities and buildings as venues for arts and cultural activities, since that's a need in our community. Under goal number 4, Objective 1, Strategy B, the Commission felt that it was important to collaborate both with city departments as well as outside organizations to discuss and recommend policies to attract arts and cultural development, businesses, and organizations. Goal number 5, we added a second objective, which the commission felt was very important, and that is to identify alternative permanent funding sources for the arts in Glendale. And these are actually the strategies that I've included, are some recommendations I have, and we can discuss these 4 items. One is incorporate a long-term funding strategy for arts and arts programs within the city's financial plan. After further review, I'm changing this a little bit to read, identify specific funding sources to provide access to the arts for low and moderate income groups. I've deleted the rest of that sentence. I think we can open it up to a lot of different funding sources, and we don't want to specify one type. C is seek sources of funding through federal, state, municipal, corporate, and foundation programs, as well as individual gifts and endowments, and establish a mechanism to encourage and publicly recognize individual gifts, including private philanthropy, donations, and endowments. I'm happy to stop here. You can give me some feedback on these 4 items. If not, I can just continue and finish on with the rest of the goals, and then we can come back. Which do you prefer?
Let's continue.
You want to continue? Okay. Goal number 6. With this too, we added a third objective. That's to encourage public art programs and activities that support city identified or recognized cultural and or social issues. We added in foster arts outreach programs in senior centers, private institutions, hospitals, and places of worship. We could also add a health and safety department, such as police and fire department within our city. We can use local multilingual publications and media to promote arts programming. And finally, encourage the retention and advancement of community-specific arts and cultural heritage organizations. In terms of community resources, under potential partners and collaborators, we got everybody. Just the only addition is in the first sentence to include individual artists. So it should read all arts, cultural, and creative organizations, businesses, and individual artists in Glendale are considered a partner. And finally, the urban art program, the commission wanted some specifics and some revisions in the types of art that the fund could pay for. So I've made those changes. The one other addition that I think we need to specify, and I think it's one of the most obvious ones, and it was in the guidelines, but I think we were so excited about the types of arts we could program, we forgot about some of the important things such as maintenance of art. So, and that's included in the urban art guidelines that the City Council approved in 2010, that the fund could be used to pay for maintenance of art installations or to do some minor infrastructure or capital improvements to be able to put a permanent artwork or to be able to include that. So I will include that language that it can to allow funding for maintenance of existing city facilities or new community facilities for purposes of art. That concludes my overview. So if you'd like, we can go back to page number where is it? Page number 7, in terms of identifying alternative permanent funding sources for the arts in Glendale. If there are additional strategies that you'd like to include, if you have any questions, I'm happy to discuss those 4 strategies.
Mr. Chair, before we go to that, I have a couple of general questions on this. May I?
Yeah, let's do it that way. And
Sure.
Then,
just to clarify certain things so that we can discuss this in a more informed way. The questions. In the last package that you gave us, in addition to the 9 pages of the general plan, there were a couple of pages with some additional information which is missing on this one. I'm not quite sure if I'm correct or not, but I have some notes from the last meeting. Can you tell me what happened to those?
That was the report, wasn't it?
This is the report of it. Could be. I mean, I'm not quite sure.
If you show me what it is, I could let you know.
Yes. Those 2 pages, which part are they?
That should be the report.
The part of the
Oh,
report?
this was part of the staff report that I presented at the last month.
Okay.
This was a summary, this was a summary about the different portions of the
So I
plan.
misplaced the pages and there is a confusion there. Okay, I apologize for that, but at least it's clear now. The other question, general question that I have, from what I see in here and from your comments, you said you will add this, you will add that in certain areas. So basically, the report that we have in front of us is still, other than our discussion that is going to take place, is not complete yet. This has to be finalized and then approved by us. Is that correct?
The commission can choose to provide all of their recommendations at this meeting. I will incorporate them, and then you can approve it with the changes and recommendations, and then the next step would be to take it to the council, or
Yeah,
if
but
you'd like to...
before we take the council, do we have an opportunity to vote on the final draft? On the final document?
I can, if you choose to defer that final approval to a next meeting, we can do that, or you can approve the draft as a final draft today with recommendations or changes. If you recall, we did something similar with the temporary art display and parks policies. Even when we brought back, it was near final, you still had comments, and we incorporated all those comments, and we were able to finalize the product based on your comments. So you can choose to do that with this document.
So basically, based on the discussion that we have today, we can either approve this and trust the staff that is going to incorporate, or depending on what it is, we can ask them back to have a final vote on it, right, before sending to the city council. Okay. All right. Just wanted to clarify that. So, thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
Well, I have a couple of questions on specifics, but, okay, let me just make that two, because
Yeah, let's go through the entire document if you have
Exactly.
any questions,
Okay.
and then we'll go per person, because to be honest, I don't have that many comments, actually.
Yeah, okay.
So I'll be fairly quick.
Last time, I made a couple of comments, which I don't see it incorporated in the second draft. The two of the comments that are quite important for me, one was the use of the fund to improve our current facilities and make them a lot more art display friendly, like lighting, like in certain areas, like in the civic auditorium and all that. I don't see any changes on this present document compared to the last document incorporating this recommendation that I had last time.
Okay, I don't have that item in my notes, but the addition that I mentioned about including a sentence that says that the fund can be used for maintenance for infrastructure and capital improvements of existing city facilities or new facilities for purposes of art.
But
So
it's not in this document yet.
It's not, and that's something that that I read into, that it needs to be included. If you review the original Urban Art Fund guidelines, that's including that, so I'm going to use similar verbiage and include it in this before it goes to the city council, because that's something that that is part of the guidelines that should be in this document, so
Absolutely.
I will include that.
Okay, so we agree on that one. And the other recommendation that I had last time was, again, to work with different city departments, maybe with zoning and building departments, to facilitate and maybe even draw new guidelines, new zoning requirements, whatever it is, to facilitate any private development to with all the permitting and processing and all those process that there is, to facilitate development of art-friendly structures, buildings, maybe work and live structures, maybe whatever there is. So that whole process of planning and zoning and building departments or sections of the city, where it facilitates new developments, is not incorporated in this document also?
Under, I recall that discussion, we referred back to goal number 4, objective 1. Strategy C, we discussed, that item says discuss policies that impact art and private development that include incentives, and that word incentives include the facilitating of permits, everything that the planning department and building and safety does, as well as requirements and or funding mechanism for inclusion of arts and cultural spaces and private development. So number C includes a lot. So we're not just talking about, planning expediting the permits, but it's also working with the building and safety department in terms of building codes. It's also looking for funding sources to be able to come up with those policies that make it easier to develop art-friendly developments.
Okay. I checked that. I read it. I saw the verbiage, but it doesn't. It's so general that it doesn't really address the recommendation and suggestion that I had last time. So I would really like that to be a lot more detailed and be more specific.
Well, if the commission chooses to get very specific in this document, we can. If not, that's an item that we can include in the work plan because what this document does is it provides us the foundation and a larger view of a lot of the different policies we can do. Once we start getting specific, that's something that we can include in the work plan. So what goal number 4, special objective 1 does, even strategy B is, again, collaborate with organizations and other city departments to recommend these policies, includes what your ideas are, which are very important, but a lot of other ideas. So once we get specific, then we're potentially leaving out other policies that we can discuss. So this is all encompassing. So in our work plan, that's something that you'll see is going to be specific of some of these directives that each of you have brought up, and I've been keeping a list, and that's what we'll include is that's going to be, for example, one focus area that you choose to include in your work plan.
Yeah, I understand, and I appreciate that. But again, this is so general that many people, different people would have different interpretation and different understanding of it. What I really would like to do is make it kind of more tighter and more specific, and I'm not saying very, very specific. I'm not going to sit here and develop a zoning code for this type of developments. But what I'm trying to say is that is our expectation. If we want to be an arts-friendly city, we really have to also through the entire city government and all these different city departments collaborate and work towards that goal. Basically, that's what I'm trying to accomplish here.
I think that under goal number 4, objective 1, strategy B, I think that already encompasses that.
It's not enough for me. That's basically what I'm trying to say. I know it's an improvement, strategy number B and number C, but still, it's just, it's too general.
I really can't think of any way that somebody could read this and misconstrue it as anything other than what you're talking about, Commissioner Gregorian.
I understand, but we agree to disagree on this issue.
Well, this is, we have to agree at the end of the day so we can get this through the process. So,
If I may, I agree with Chairperson Kivanian on this point. I'm concerned about getting too specific because I think in our last meeting I had noted that I completely agree with your sentiments and I'm aware also of some of the types of policies and zoning ordinances and things that could be addressed, but I feel like having something that's a little bit more vague allows us then to identify and advocate for those specific things as they become apparent to us, either things that we already know about or things that we learn about. And I'm reticent to get too specific in this. I could imagine adding some verbiage like advocating for, not just a discussion so it feels more active, for instance, but in terms of specifics of what we want to research more and determine how we could make things work better for the arts through the planning department. I don't think it's needed in this document.
I actually think that by adding the word advocate instead of discuss is actually that covers it, because then that makes us actual physical entities behind the policy.
It sounds to me that at least 3 of us, Commissioner Lee has not spoken yet, we don't disagree. Actually, the only way is the way we see this thing done. On the general purpose of us wanting for the city and the entire departments to be a lot more friendly towards art development, it seems that we agree on it. It's just how we put this in here and that we kind of are discussing now. That's my impression.
Right.
And overall, I personally think that the more vague the documents are, the more open the documents are, any document, the more they are open to interpretation and they are more open to action or inaction. And in this specific situation, what I would really like to see is for us to be a lot more active and proactive to hopefully implement new policies and new planning codes and zoning codes where we can encourage developers to incorporate art and artistic activities in their future projects. Basically, that's what I'm saying.
I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I can't imagine it being worded any other way than it is already. Could you suggest a better wording so that I have a grasp of exactly what level of detail we're talking about? Because Commissioner Gorgon, I know you very well, and I know you're a very detailed person. So I'm very curious to see how detailed you can possibly get with this item.
Well, just as somebody that's listening to the discussion, I actually was going to jump in and say I think the word advocate says a lot more than discuss. When discussed, a lot of people can discuss a lot of things, even if you sit around a coffee table, but advocating actually shows action. So what we could, strategy C, I can reword and say advocate and recommend policies that actually shows that not only are you discussing but you're really pushing forward and you're going to be making recommendations on those. Does that make you feel a little bit better?
We are getting there.
Okay.
If I may too, looking at this document, unlike perhaps the outline we've provided on the urban art strategy, this is a document that we are going to be utilizing. So it's really only going to be as strong, regardless of what we put in it, as strong and innovative as the commissioners that are sitting here and making the annual plan, or annual work plan. So I think as long as the framework is within this document, we are then free to drill down and get as specific as we want to as a commission. And I think that's what's important, because these are strategies, they're not tactics.
Commissioner Green, we're all trying to convince you, but you don't look like you're going to budge at this moment. But because, like you said, I think we're all on the same page with that. It's just about the wording and the flexibility of the document as opposed to the rigidness. And I think that I completely agree with Commissioner Deaver. I think that if we impose too rigid standards, then it becomes then a work plan, not a strategic plan.
I'm not recommending rigidity at all. I'm recommending something additional where not only the library and arts and culture department, but all the other city departments and overall the city of Glendale will become advocates for art and artists. As you know, in my private business, I also do a lot of development, and I would like to have the opportunity to maybe, let's say, develop an artist's village somewhere, where there will be let's say, a development of, let's say, certain number of private residences with their studios and with their shops and maybe a little gallery where the artists and the painters and the sculptors and whoever else can have their little work and live spaces where, it will be kind of a very nice village. I mean, so I'm really dreaming that, and I hope I will have the opportunity to even develop one very soon, maybe the first one in Glendale. But the zoning codes do not allow me to do that. So basically, that's what my main concern is. And I'm sure you remember, and Mr. Loomis was here last time from the planning department, and we discussed, and because of our advocacy in the downtown specific plan, we encouraged and accomplished developers to have, additional floors, a floor or two in their development if they have their first floor as a, art-related activity. So this is basically what I'm talking about. I think, us sitting here and talking about arts and plan and whatever is good, but probably we need the entire city and the entire, policies of the city to show that, yes, we are indeed an arts-friendly community and city. Basically, that's my concern. I mean, how we word it here, a word here or a word there, that's just really not that important. The important thing is for Glendale to be known as an arts-friendly city where they encourage artists not only by, some exhibition space, but also by living and working space. Basically, that's what I'm trying to say. And I know it's not for us to go to the planning and the zoning issues and, implement those policies or develop these policies. But what I'm expecting the other city departments to do is to start that process and for us to help them and see how we can help the artists to have a little easier and better life.
See, and actually this document doesn't stop us from doing that. What I think is happening is I think we're veering away from the strategic planning aspect, which this document does, to the work plan, which is what you're talking about. That's the putting our feet on the ground and running with it. This is the idea. This is the direction in which we're going to run, and what you're talking about is the work plan, where we actually get on the road and start running. So it sounds like not that there's a confusion, but I don't want to. It sounds like we want to write into the strategic plan a work plan idea. I think
that's not the intention. If I give you that impression, I apologize, but that's not the impression. I think I made it clear. I don't want to repeat what I really have to say.
Well, I just want to make it clear that the City Council has identified 10 priority and focus areas, and arts and culture is one of those. And just by developing this arts and cultural plan, we're sending a message to the city, to the residents, to the businesses, and to the artists in the community that Glendale is serious about arts and that we are an arts-friendly city. So this is the most important step that we're taking. So just this plan, this document that you're discussing, I think is achieving a lot of what you're doing. Of what you're suggesting is to tell people that Glendale is open to arts and we want to encourage the growth of arts. So I really understand some of your concerns, and I think that really gets into the work plan. So I think what we discussed about maybe changing a couple of words from discuss to advocate and recommend policies, I think is going to kind of hone in on that a little bit more. But I just want once we adopt this plan, it's also going to send a message to all of the different departments that there is a plan in place. So they're going to have to be cognizant of the arts and cultural plan when they're doing some of their own planning and be able to work with our department and the commission.
Well, advocate and recommend is much better than discuss to begin with. So that's another step forward.
Okay.
Commissioner Lee, sorry.
I think the best thing that I can say is that in Goal 4, Objective 1, Part B, it tells exactly what you want in there, but not in specific detail. For example, if we start honing in on just zoning, what about fire? For example, the village that you're interested in might deal with more people in the courtyard. Then it deals with fire department issues. Now, if you're only saying zoning and permitting, then you're forgetting about fire. There's so many other intricate details that are components that could be affected. If you just point out a few and forget the rest somehow, then you might be short-sighting what our main objective is. And that's what my concern is. By saying collaborating deals with everything that we can come up with. There's no restrictions for what we can do in what it's saying here. But if you start honing in on, permit process, zoning, planning, then you're sort of isolating other things that are affected by it, and that's what my concern would be.
But I never said let's forget fire department.
No, I know, but I'm just saying, by us trying to figure out more different language to use. I mean, this basically spells it out, saying we're going to work with every city department. We're going to discuss with them. We're going to push. That's what it's saying in there to make new plans to make this work, and that's what I see.
May I make a suggestion that in that 1B, and you can all tell me whether this is distinct enough, but to discuss and recommend policies and ordinance modifications, as an example, is ordinance broad enough to cover different, whether it's planning or fire zoning codes, or just other, but there's a word there that I'm kind of missing, that it's not just a policy, but we're talking about things that are regulations within the city, answer my own question. So regulation modifications in addition to policies, does that better capture what you're talking?
The spirit.
The spirit of what you're...
We're getting there, closer.
Well, is that close enough so we can...
Are we close enough to be able to move on, Commissioner Gregorian, at this point?
No, but we are getting there. No, that's a very good idea. Instead of discuss and recommend, if we have advocate and recommend, and recommend change of policies and new ordinances and anything that Commissioner Deaver suggested, we are getting there. Again, I don't want to be specific. I don't want to bypass anything or anybody. I think I made it very clear. My main concern is to help anybody who wants to develop an arts-friendly environment to do so with clear plans. Whether it will come later by us collaborating with the planning department or the community development department or whoever else, we can do all of that. The most important thing is we have to take the steps forward to be as arts and artist-friendly city as possible. And development and construction and building is one of the areas that we should work on. That's basically what I'm trying to say.
Okay, I understood, and I think changing discuss to advocate and recommend, and then also adding in regulation modification, I think is going to have you covered.
Yeah, I think that gets there.
As a formal employee of the department that handled a lot of this stuff, I think you're going to be fine. This is going to empower you to have those discussions. So
that's why I'm telling all this to you, because I know you understand what I'm talking about.
And so I think that this has you covered. So I think if you feel comfortable or even lukewarm, I think we can move on to goal number 5, so we can discuss a couple of those other additions that we had made. So in objective 2, that was something that was inserted, which was identifying alternative and permanent funding sources for the arts. So I think I had everything covered based on some of the discussions we had at our retreat, as well as the recommendations. So it essentially requires us to come up with a long-term funding strategy somehow within the city's financial plan, and then seek sources of funding, whether it's through endowments, donations, or grants. If you don't have any changes, then we can move on to some of the other questions or comments that you may have.
Doesn't look like there are any changes to that.
No,
to goal number 5, any of the objectives?
No, but one thing I have generally on some of these goals, I'm not quite sure what exactly you mean by, and it is on goal number 3, goal number 4, and I think maybe goal number 5, continue to identify parks, libraries, etc. What does continue to identify really refer to?
Well, we've started the process by identifying the parks facilities that are available for the display of artwork. So this is a continuation of that. So the Commission had expressed interest in expanding that policy citywide, so that strategies that we would continue to do that. So maybe next year, after we implement that first step of that program, if we see there's a need to expand the policy, then we can identify, well, do we want to now expand it to library facilities or community centers? So it gives you the option to expand that program.
That's fine, I understand. And I don't have any objection to it. But for me, continue to identify, it's kind of, I don't know, it's just very, again, vague.
Well, if we had just put identify, then that means we haven't done that, and since you have done that, so we would be continuing,
That's
so.
right.
And
That's
I think that was the topic of contention last time, if I'm not mistaken. So,
Still is.
yeah, right.
No, but I really have no major problem with it. I can live
Okay.
with it. But as long as we are clear what this phrase refers to.
Okay,
Any-
any questions or general comments about the plan?
I'm looking for my colleagues, and doesn't look like anybody has any further comments or. I mean, I think we've discussed this. I mean, to the death of it almost. Even though we're voting to bring it to
think-
life, but
Chair, you can open it up to comments if you'd
My
like.
main comment is that this is really a very good document. You worked very hard on this. I really appreciate that. We may put our input in there also. And it is, again, a little too general and too vague, but I understand why that is. And I think overall it's a great improvement to what we've had. But the most important thing is, after this document, the real work begins, because then we have to implement it and start doing the hard work. But it is a very good document, and you really worked very hard. That's my general comment. I congratulate you.
Thank
and I
you.
know because of your familiarity with the planning and all that process, I think it has a lot of that in here. So it's a great work.
I'm going to open it up at this point to public comment. So, Mr. Heimbold?
Thank you again. Before I jump into it, I wanted to compliment Annette on a great plan. I think it's very comprehensive. I think it's strategic. It should be general. And I also pointed out that in the last week, I was in touch with Annette to discuss a commercial space for our art organization to exhibit in. And we're going to meet with Megan McEachern next week. Only as an example of how the Art and Cultural Commission can work with the community to help us out. So thanks on that. My thoughts about the plan, I talked with our gang at the Glendale Art Association, and in general, everybody thought the plan covered everything. You know, if you did all this, it would be transformative, and we're all for it. You know, it's good stuff. We also like the idea that there's an annual work plan that's developed, because we think that's where the rubber meets the road, and that is where we could make a contribution if we understand how it all works. There's two areas that we think we can contribute in. One is under Goal 3, Objective 1, strategy, develop an annual signature arts and cultural event. And, you know, in a club like ours, people participate in these events all over California. You know, San Clemente has a week-long deal with painting and paint-outs and exhibitions and so on, and St. Louis Obispo and on. And a lot of them are really wonderful events, and they attract a lot of artists and a lot of people to the community. So in that regard, when it comes time to making the work plan for this objective, we are offering to sit in and help out and make recommendations. The next area on page 9, Glendale Urban Art Program Guidelines. Item 3, acquisition and improvement of real property for the purpose of displaying artwork or the purpose of a cultural facility. You know, we've been here before, you know, saying that we really need an exhibition space because we're really cramped. I know, Razmik, you've been to some of our events, and they're very tight. We can use more room. In our last fall salon, we had 90 artists participating. Each time we get more artists showing up with more and better work. So we're very much in favor of seeing the city eventually have an art center. And we think there's probably a near-term and a far-term approach that should be taken. You know, to come up with an art center, to architect it and get the city planners, et cetera, working on something in development, it could take 4 or 5 years. On the other hand, there are places in the city which could be acquired more quickly, and there's probably a good interim approach that with vacant facilities near the city center that could be used for such purposes. So we would also be willing to sit down and say, hey, here's what we would need in as example, square feet, lighting, et cetera, access, and make a contribution to that area. So anyway, we think it's a great plan. There are 2 contributions. We have a recommendation. The annual work plan as described in here, it was hard for us to understand what it was. We think a little additional coverage would help. If you have an annual plan that you do every year, there's a date when the plan has to be ready. You have reviews and all that sort of stuff. There should be meetings, there should be stakeholders and community people who have a shot at it. So I think another paragraph on this plan explaining how that works would be very useful to people like us who are wondering what it all means. Likewise, when it comes to working with people in the city, if there were some names and responsibility areas as the work plans come into focus, that would be helpful. I'm assuming the plan would have different sections or chapters addressing different areas that if we had a name that we could call up and say, I want to sit down and work with you, I think that would be helpful. And then once the work plan is concrete and it's underway, it would be great if the art and cultural community would brief us, the community people. I thought the last mixer was terrific over in the community center, so I'd recommend more of them, and also some kind of online presence. Anyway, that's my recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Hamel. I have another card, Elisa Glickman.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Elisa Glickman. I am the Chief Executive Officer for Glendale Arts, which is the management company of the Alex Theater and the Glendale Pops Orchestra, websites, a whole bunch of stuff. We're very busy. On behalf of our board and our staff who have read this thoroughly, we too want to applaud city staff, especially Annette Vartanian, for the hard work in getting this through. In the 8 years that I've worked in this community, I've heard a strategic plan be batted about on many occasions, and I know that with the transition to the new Library, Arts, and Culture Department, I think I screwed that up, this was one of the top priority lists, top on the priority list. So I think everyone did an exceptional job in putting this strategy together. One thing that we do want to note, and one of the things that we do want to highlight, is we really applaud the fact that you're really looking at public-private partnerships in order to accomplish all of the ambitious goals that you've set forth for yourself. As one of your private partners in the process, we would encourage you to work with us, if at all possible, on some of the things noted in your plan, specifically your websites. We have a Glendale Arts website, which is ever growing and ever expanding. It certainly doesn't accomplish all of the things that we want it to accomplish, but we think together, similar to Artsopolis or Experience LA, which are 2 of the top public-private partnership websites that really talk about the community, talk about events that are in the community, and then certainly add that extra added layer of what artists can contribute and accomplish. We're actually launching our GA website 4.0 in the next 2 weeks, and it'll include a whole artist feature, an artist blog. Artists could post their work, link to our Facebook and our social media accounts. So we really see this as an extension of the things that you want to accomplish, leveraging the assets that we've already built. We see that as a great opportunity for us to get rolling in the process. And we encourage more of those relationships as you move forward in your work plan. And just know that our board and our staff is committed to working very closely with this commission and with the city in making sure that your goals and priorities for making this a richer arts and cultural community really come to pass, because when your work is done and you accomplish your goals, then we all benefit from that. And we really see that symbiotic relationship being very important in taking us to the next step in all the things that this community has to offer in the LA region. So again, we applaud you for all of the hard work that you've put into the process, and we really look forward to ongoing conversations and ongoing partnerships throughout your work efforts. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I have another card, but it looks like Mr. Milano is here for summer programs, yes? Oh, actually, okay. Mr. Milano.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to come before the Commission to express some of the thoughts that I've expressed for many years in the past, and I want to reiterate it now that you have the structure of a strategic plan going forward. All of us have been able to see at least those of us who really care about art and culture and performances, the success of the California Center in downtown Los Angeles, and every summer program is just an amazing example of what's possible. We've all seen the success of Levitt Pavilion in Pasadena. It's one of the places that I frequent the most during the summer to listen to those and hear those concerts. And I always wonder why it is that we don't have the same type of dynamic approach to the performing arts for the public in Glendale, something that is free of charge. And that was one of the reasons why I was trying to promote for so long a truly dynamic Central Park that could serve just like Memorial Park does in Pasadena. Well, now we have a fairly large area in the Central Park adjacent to the library, and I think it's suitable for us to get going with some really good programs in the summer for performing arts that actually bridges the city and brings in the residents of south of Glendale together with the rest of Glendale to have a communal experience on the arts. And I hope that we can get something off the ground this year and make it a reality. But I've had other ideas that I brought forward in the past, and here's another one of those. In the half hour before the City Council session begins, I always thought about bringing in many of the fantastically capable and talented students of music at Glendale High, for example, or Hoover. Having a half an hour of chamber music right here, right before, in these chambers. We'll move this aside and begin to engage it. It doesn't cost us anything. It would be a half an hour prior to the start of the City Council session, and it would also highlight the significant amount of talent that we have, especially with Glendale youth. And I would also like to encourage you to, if you ever had a chance to go to Sedona, Arizona, and all the sculptures that basically line the streets, we have Brand Boulevard with significantly wide sidewalks. That would be an ideal place to basically encourage for a significant number of sculptures to be placed there. So it adds to the whole overall experience. Finally, I want to say that I've seen many strategic plans in the city before, going back to the 1990s, that somehow never get traction. I'm going to suggest that you look at the use of the balanced scorecard that allows us to put the significant cascading objectives so that we can measure them on a continual basis and bring it forward and bring it to the attention of the council and the general public. Those are my recommendations. And by the way, I want to let you know that I pull papers to run for city council. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Milano. And actually, I always constantly bring it up as a joke that I'm one day going to roll a piano here and give a recital, but they never let me. No, I'm kidding.
Chair Kivanian, I also want to read into the record that Michael Sheehan, a community member, submitted written comments on this item, and it's going to be incorporated as part of the record. So.
Wonderful. So are there any further comments on this item? So that means that we would need to entertain a motion at that point.
One item is if you would like to offer some additional clarity on what a work plan is on this, on the strategic plan, I can develop that. But if you feel comfortable with the way that it's written, we can leave it as is.
To be honest, I'm not all too bent out of shape about the way the work plan is mentioned here, because we'll actually have a work plan. So then this becomes kind of a secondary document as more in a supportive role than the actual work plan. I mean, we'll have the actual work plan to present. So I'm not too bent out of shape about that. I don't think we have to go into too much detail, because then it becomes a document within a document, and there's no point in doing that.
I want to make a motion to approve art and cultural plan with the recommended changes.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Can we have a roll call, please?
Commissioners Deaver,
Yes.
Gregorian,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Chairperson Kavanian.
Yes.
And also just to, as a reminder, once this item is scheduled for the city council meeting, I will send an email to the commission and of course all the community members that came and spoke on behalf of the plan, just so you're available if you choose to come to the city council meeting.
Great. All right. So next we can move back onto the agenda as written. So at 5A1.
Item 5, business agenda. At A1, nomination and election of new chairperson.
Each January, the commission selects a chairperson to serve a one-year term commencing in January. And again, it's a one-year term. The report describes the process for selecting a chairperson. It's consistent with city practice, and the commission has generally followed this process. Just to remind you that there is an election in April that will impact the makeup of the commission. And as mentioned, one of the commissioners had recommended that this discussion be deferred until after the election. But the commission that's here today, you can choose to nominate a chairperson, a new chairperson, the same chairperson, or defer the discussion until after the election and when the commission is finalized.
Can somebody explain how it came that the commission elects the chair in January and then there's an election in April?
I'm not sure how that came about, but there are other commissions that elect. There are some commissions that elect their chairperson in January, others that elect in August, and it's not the most convenient, but
My only intelligent guess is because maybe the commission was formed in January initially, and maybe it started traditionally from there. But other than that, I can't really think of any other reason. Especially when, oh, and also I think there is another reason. Now each council member elects or nominates their own commissioner. Before it was a committee to recommend, so had nothing to do with direct council responsibility, council member responsibility. Maybe that's why. Yeah. But anyway, whatever it is, we are electing a chair in January. So,
yes.
Right?
Well, you could choose to elect a chairperson or postpone that discussion until after the election. You can make that decision because, as mentioned, because of the election, because the council members appoint commissioners, there might be, there might be changes, but it's ultimately up to the commission to make that decision.
Well,
are there any thoughts or ideas?
I would ask, what would staff recommend?
No, I don't think they should recommend.
Staff cannot.
No, they cannot. They cannot recommend.
The only time that staff cannot recommend something is this item.
My personal feeling is that we should just continue our tradition, go with the election, and if there is a change in the council makeup, then that's what it is. Then it will be a new election if necessary, and depending on who we choose. So my personal feeling is, if it's a one-year term, it's a one-year term. The term expires today, so we should just continue the tradition. That's my personal feeling. I don't see any reason why we should extend it another 2 or 3 months. And if we nominate today Mr. Kevanian, then we nominate and he serves a second year if that's necessary. But I don't think a chair should really serve more than a year. That's my personal feeling.
To be quite honest, I'm not. The only reason I'm saying this is because it really does not. Actually, I was even in so many private meetings with friends and so forth that I could not wait almost until that extra burden was lifted off my shoulder when January 1st comes along. But the only issue that I have, and it doesn't matter if I'm chair or anybody else is chair. It doesn't bother me either way. But what I am afraid of is the the change of guard that's going to come in in April. That is my only concern, and that doesn't. And actually, if I'm not mistaken, Commissioner Darrell Vanessian was the one who offered that we don't elect a new chair until April, and I discussed it with her to get her. I know that she wasn't going to come to the meeting, and I wanted to make sure that what her opinion was heard and was understood, at least by me. And she said that she didn't want to upset essentially the balance of things until we got to an election. And of course, if you look at the possibilities, 3 of us may not be here come April, and including myself.
Maybe 4.
Maybe 4, possibly, exactly. So to all of a sudden have a huge change like that, and having to pick a new chair again, and of course we don't even know, because certain council people may not know who they're going to put in replacement of us, so there may even be a staggering of that. So I don't know.
With your discussions with Commissioner Darrell Vanessian, did she give any specific reasons that you can share with us?
No, she did not. I'm not going to share those because they're not mine to share. But
another option, Chair Cavagna and Commissioners, is that since she is absent today, you could always put it over to next
postpone
week
it, right,
and have a full discussion on this.
Next week or next month?
Next month.
I'm sorry, next month.
That's getting closer to April. And also, I understand that comment, and I appreciate it, and I do understand that Commissioner Darrell Vanessian is sick today and could not make it here. And I'm glad she didn't, because otherwise we would all gotten her viruses and go home sick probably. So she did the right thing. But, we have a commission with a quorum, and we can decide. So my recommendation is to move forward with the election.
Okay. Do you have a nomination then?
My nomination is Ms. Deaver. And since her council member is not up for election, I think she can complete the 1-year term very easily.
She is actually up for election.
Laura is not. Oh, she is?
Yeah.
Oh. Okay. Sorry.
Just for
That's
the
right.
record.
Yeah. Well, I don't even know why I made that mistake.
And you picked the wrong one.
No, but I still recommend Ms. Deaver, and hopefully Ms. Friedman will be re-elected, and if she doesn't, then we handle it then.
Okay.
That's my personal feeling.
I second the nomination.
Yep. Okay, that is the only nomination. Commissioner Deaver, do you have comments?
I certainly am honored by that recommendation and appreciate that, and I accept that. Yes, thank you.
Is there a roll call at this point? There's no other nominations.
So we are going ahead with the election of the new chair and electing Ms. Deaver?
There's a nomination, so I have to entertain that.
Yes. Commissioners Deaver,
Yes.
Gregorian,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Chairperson Cavagna.
Absolutely.
Okay. Congratulations.
So glad that's over.
Well, thank you. I'm feeling the relief.
I know, right? I get to move. I get to move.
Now
to the
we can
wings.
give you a hard time.
Right. Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah, that's a double-edged sword.
So I will vacate my position. It's so nice to be able to move someplace else. And Commissioner Deaver can continue running the meeting.
I literally need to shift here, I suppose.
Shift the name tag.
Oh, we just need this.
I'll make it easy.
Thank you. Well, I will just remark again, thank you very much for the support and the confidence in my fellow commissioners. I have, actually, there's large shoes to fill. I want to thank you, former Chairperson Cavagna, for the work in leading us through this last year, because I think we've accomplished quite a bit, and I think we're on a really great roll. And so I'm pretty excited, actually, about this next year, which hopefully will continue to be an entire year. So with that, can we move on to the next item, please?
Item A2, review and approve Diamond Awards awardees list as recommended by the panel.
As you may recall, it's almost been a year, but the commission approved a master list of potential panelists to review and select the Diamond Award awardees. Commissioners Gregorian and Derho-Vanessian were also selected to serve on this panel as non-voting members. In December, the panel, consisting of 3 panelists, met and reviewed all of the nominations, and they have made a recommendation of awardees. They've submitted it for the commission's review and approval. I've provided additional information on the awardees. We also have some of the portfolios available if you'd like to review them. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer. Commissioner Gregorian can also provide some insight if you do have any questions, as he was on the selection panel as a non-voting member.
Are there any questions or comments on the item?
Make a motion to accept all the nominees or awardees.
I will second, because now I can.
A roll call on that, please.
Commissioners Gregorian,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Kavanian,
Yes.
Chairperson Deaver.
Yes.
And just an item is something that I did recommend is because a lot of these nominations came in about a year ago and some even sooner, it might be something for the commission to consider maybe at the February, March, or April meeting to bring these awardees here to recognize them at a commission meeting, and then you can provide them with a certificate. But also, you can consider hosting a formal event, as you have done in past years, but we can discuss that when we're developing the work plan, because all of these little items have money associated with it, so we're going to need to look at it in a, as part of the bigger picture. But if you want to decide today to designate, February or March, to invite those awardees to come here so you can recognize them, we can decide that now. Let me know, and we can be in touch with them.
Actually, I was kind of hoping that that the awardees at some point do come to a commission meeting and do present some of their works if they can. I mean, in a physical form. That would be nice. I think that's something that we should do.
I personally believe that since the inception of this awards, we kind of thought this is going to be kind of a mini Oscars thing where we award and encourage our local artists. I always thought that we were going to, and it was part of the plan anyway, to have that ceremony and the reception and all that. So I personally think if we bring the artists here before that reception and ceremony, it kind of gets all the excitement and all the heat out of it. So although it is a good idea to bring artists here and, generally speaking, and encourage them, but for the Diamond Award, I don't think that's a good idea. I think we should go ahead with our original plan, as we have done in the past, to have a ceremony and an award ceremony and all the others, because they bring their families, they bring their friends, they bring their clients, and it's kind of a very nice and exciting event. We've all been there. And,
but again, I agree with you, but because there's not one slated, there's not an event slated for now. We don't have a date, we don't have a location, the budgetary issues, so forth and so on. I think just as a nicety, because as commissioners, I only know several of these organizations. Actually, I don't even know the individual artists. I only know the Express Art Center and the Glendale Art Associates, and I would love to meet the other four.
Well, you will meet them at the ceremony, but the thing is, I personally know all of them except the young artist, and they are all very, very deserved winners, all of them.
No question about that. That's
the panel did an excellent job. The judges did an excellent job, and everything went as they should have. But again, we will have the opportunity to meet with them in this ceremony. But and I was hoping that this was already a part of the plan and part of the budget. So whatever it is, I really would not like to skip that ceremony. I'm totally against skipping the ceremony because it was just, as I said, our mini Oscars. Maybe we can hold them in the Alex Theater with, maybe with some city backing or something. I don't know. Maybe not at the Embassy Suites like last time, or we did it once, I think, in the Brand Library and the Art Center once. So, we have facilities to be able to use at the minimum cost. But, skipping the ceremony for me is an absolute no.
No, again, I wasn't suggesting that whatsoever. I think we should do a ceremony.
The ceremony is something we can discuss as we're developing the work plan, because I've been keeping track of some of these projects or these, some of these programs that you want, and the list is growing and the budgets are growing too. So before we decide whether or not there's going to be a specific event, you're going to need to see that as part of the bigger picture, if there's even money available to do something like that. That's why it was recommended, is if you can, because we're not going to have that discussion until February, it might carry over through March and April, is to bring the artists here. So just in case, if you can't have the Oscar-style event that you're anticipating, that you'd like to have, at least the artists do get recognized earlier, and that they're not waiting an additional 3 months.
Well, that's the whole issue. This Diamond Awards, we started in 2011. Because of the changes and all this, whatever happened in the past, kind of delayed. Now that we have the winners, I think we should really start, the event, and not, again, think of budgets and this and that and delay another few months just to recognize the artists. It gets the excitement out of it. It just defeats the whole purpose of it.
Commissioner Gregorian, I might say, may ask the question that we did not have this budgeted as an event. We had it sort of loosely as part of our work plan, I think, scheduled for October or so. So there was never any formalized budget for that. Is that correct?
Correct.
So I think I completely understand the point, both points. But I think the concern is that if we don't have the funding for it, we can't just put on the event, and so we need to wait and decide that against other elements in our annual plan, in which case then is that a little worse for those artists that are then going to have to wait for 3 months. So that if we can have sort of an interim recognition of the award and the press release on that, with the knowledge that we would like to have some sort of more formal reception, however small, and that might be a wine and cheese type of event that we could discuss as part of the work plan in the coming months. It's just an unfortunate timing issue more than anything else, and we certainly don't want the artists to feel less respected by it, but I think the sooner that we can recognize them publicly, the better, frankly.
Chair Deaver and Commissioners, certainly staff can bring this back to you, because this item, we don't want to go any further discussion on it. Rather, it was just approval of the recommendation. So we can bring it back to you at another time.
Thank you. So next item, please.
At 5B, discussion items, review and approve guidelines for requesting and presenting mayor's proclamations and commendations.
At the December meeting, I reviewed a policy that would enable the commission to request formal certificates to present to arts organizations and artists. Essentially, it's proclamations and mayor commendations that are formal certificates signed by the mayor and adorned with the city seal. These are at no cost to the commission. But after some discussion and deliberation, the commission stated that it would prefer some sort of like a two-tier recognition process that would allow the commission to request these proclamations and mayor's commendations for outstanding achievements and significant milestones, as well as a commission-issued certificate to present to artists and art organizations for events and other speaking engagements. So the city doesn't have a specific guideline, so I researched what other communities do, what's consistent with proclamations and mayor's commendations in other communities. So essentially, proclamations are generally given to organizations and businesses. These are in recognition of significant organizational milestones. For example, if an organization is celebrating the 100th anniversary, if it's in observant of a certain day, week, or month, such as National Arts and Humanities Month, or in recognition for an organization's contributions to the community of its time, talent, or resources beyond the normal call of duty. Commendations are presented to individuals, and it's something along the same scale. Again, it's for an individual's contributions to the community for their time, talent, or resources beyond the normal call of duty for outstanding achievements in arts and culture. For example, if a local artist is selected to participate in a national or world-renowned exhibition, and also if in recognition of an artist who has demonstrated particular commitment to his or her work throughout a long career and has had an important impact nationally and internationally on the field. Excuse me. So the commission did say that they wanted to reserve the proclamation and the commendation for very, very specific, unique, and milestones. And so we prepared these guidelines for your review. You can discuss it, and we can bring it back for approval at a following meeting. Consistent with requesting this, we would request that a memo addressed to the mayor be submitted indicating why you feel the organization, business, or individual deserves the proclamation or commendation. And these can be submitted to Arts and Culture staff, and then we can forward and coordinate with the city manager's office.
Chair Deaver and Commissioners, as Ms. Vartanian mentioned, inadvertently the word review and approve was just the description for this item, but it's just simply a discussion item.
And with that, do we have any comments or suggestions to these guidelines that have been presented?
I have a question. How do other commissions or boards function with this process? Do they vote as an entire commission to send a mayor's send the application for a mayor's proclamation, or how does that process work?
I was told that other commissions, if they would like to present something, then they follow the format that they submit a memo to the mayor requesting a proclamation or a commendation. They don't have formal guidelines, but because this commission requested some guidelines, that's why I gave you some specifics to work with. So you can also choose to vote on a matter if you'd like to present a proclamation or commendation, just so you know who's requesting and to get this document. So I hope that answers your question.
Kind of, yeah. But it gives me a better idea about
Okay.
How I would see this moving forward.
And we did discuss that a little bit last time, because there was concern that things might come up sort of quickly and we wouldn't have time to bring it through a formal process, and so giving our fellow commissioners some leeway in being able to make these recommendations, but then also talking about reporting on that maybe on a quarterly basis, so we can at least keep tabs on whether everybody's really following these specific guidelines. That was correct in my understanding of all of that.
Sure, we can prepare a list and report on it quarterly, but given these guidelines based on the direction from the commission, some years we might have several and other years we might not request any, but I think just that extra step of submitting a memo to the mayor, solidifies that this needs to be a special or unique situation. So what we can do is I can, as part of if you want to develop this into a policy to approve, at next month's meeting, just to include that, on a quarterly basis, staff will provide an update at the meeting, just so you know who's requested and who's received such commendations or proclamations.
Any other comments?
Yeah.
Chair Goriardi?
My personal feeling is that although this is a good step forward, but it is nowhere close to what I believe the Commission had in mind. The guidelines seem to be kind of very rigid and very strict. We have to realize that in the art world, things are a lot more open, a lot more liquid, and a lot more kind of free floating than all these strict guidelines that maybe other departments, maybe the fire department or the planning department would like. I personally think that these guidelines are kind of a lot more hindering the process than helping. The chair commented on the 3 weeks advance notice, which, we commented last time also, and we made it very clear that this may not work in this situation. And also this, 4 or 5 short paragraphs about the organization, et cetera. I mean, these are kind of quite restrictive and quite, not what I think I had in mind when brought this up. Or, for instance, it says, in recognition of an individual beyond the normal call of duty. And whatever that beyond the normal call of duty is, again, it's so vague, it can be interpreted in all ways. Basically, I think we have complicated this a lot more than what was in mind. I brought several of the commendations that I have received in the past several years from several different places, like the U.S. House of Representatives, like the mayor, like the state assembly, et cetera. Most of them are much simpler than what we envision in here with our staff recommendation. Most of them. And basically, what I have in mind, again, the art world is very different. When we go to an exhibition where there is an artist, let's say, with a 10-year track record and several exhibitions, and it is a solo exhibition or something, it's really a very nice thing to just give to that artist that we are, we are appreciating you for what you have done.
I believe your comments are more specific to the next item, which is the commission issued certificate. As you recall, you had requested 2 different certificates. The proclamation was for something different. So the next item we're going to be discussing, I think, is a little bit more to your point.
No. Actually, yes, we have another item there, but I'm covering what we are recommending the mayor. And I know all the past mayors, quite often, when we have recommended them to, make a certificate of recognition or appreciation, they have done it, with no problem. I have several, certificates of appreciation from past mayors on things that I have done. I mean, this is, I'm not here to boast about all these achievements or accomplishments, but what I'm saying is, these are much simpler from everywhere, from the U.S. House of Representatives, from the State Assembly, from the Glendale Mayor's Office, than what we are envisioning here. So basically what I'm trying to say is let's ease up, let's not take this very complicated, and let's just encourage the local artists and art organizations for what they do, rather than go through all these bureaucratic, processes of approval and whatever else there.
And, I appreciate your comments, but on page 2, the portion that says requesting proclamations and mayor's commendation, this is information that was provided by the city manager's office. So the 4 to 5 short paragraphs, it's not to make it burdensome. It's because the city manager's office and the mayor wants to discuss the depth of the achievement. And the 3 weeks, all of this information and the memo and some of the requirements are from the mayor's office and city manager's office. So this is not something that I've put together. It's something that's come from their office so that they can ensure that the commendations and proclamations that they're presenting has all the information that they do need. That's why, because this process takes a little bit longer, that's why the next item discusses a simpler certificate program that can be turned around much quicker, and it could be issued for exhibitions or openings.
Are there any other comments to Scorecard?
And as a matter of fact, I think that any of the mayor's commendations should be discussed on the commission level, and maybe not necessarily through, at a commission meeting, but at least the chair should be notified, and staff as well, by any one of us who wants to issue a commendation. Because like I said last meeting, the mayor's commendation for me is a very serious thing. That's not something that you just hand out to people. It's not. And again, like I said last time, I don't think that any of us would be doing that. However, having said that, I think it's just a procedural matter, and I think it's important to do that, to discuss on either during a commission meeting or at least between the chair and staff.
And I would agree with Commissioner Kivanian on this point. I think we discussed this pretty thoroughly at our last meeting, and which is why we came up with a two-tiered process. At the first one, in which we're trying to administer through a process that's already been set by the mayor's office, and we want to be respectful of that, but that we wanted a second to look at a second-tiered process, but where we could have, it would be a much easier process, a much quicker process where we can bring something to recognize arts organizations at their openings, artists at their openings, things that kind of come up, and that we would be much more free-flowing with that. And I believe that is the next item that's up, which is in a report format of what the staff was bringing back to us with from our request from the last meeting. Any other comments on for the discussion item? We move on to the next item, please.
At 5C, reports.
I'm sorry. Shirley.
Hello. Okay, thank you.
Sorry. On June 21st memo, and probably during our June meeting, it is noted that we were supposed to schedule the Diamond Awards. In thinking of that, I thought it was budgeted already for 2012. Because for us to say we're going to have an award without a budget, that throws me off.
Go ahead. If you want to answer on that, but I think we were talking about maybe moving this to our next meeting to have a further discussion, and we can raise that, maybe get more information from staff with regard to that point about where we were with that and what we can do moving forward. Did you have something specific to add to that?
Some of these items were discussed, but they were never formally approved as part of the work plan. And one of the issues is when the new fiscal year started in July, the budget was much larger than it is now. The budget has been, for this division, has been cut, I think, by half, so that's impacted some of the discussions that you can have. So we can present a more detailed report then, if you'd like, when we discuss the work plan.
Okay, and make sure we have what our budget is and what numbers we have to work with.
Of course.
Thank you.
Next item.
At 5C, reports information only, report on design and cost for Arts and Culture Commission certificate.
I'm just going to give you just some information that you had requested. You wanted to see budget, so the costs of issuing a commission certificate, also a design. So I worked with the graphics department to develop a high-quality certificate that's consistent with the city's overall branding and design guidelines, but that's at a very low cost, or as low of a cost as it could be with something like this. Generally, I will pass the design so you can review it. Here you go. The cost to print 1,000 master templates. So essentially what our graphics department does is they print everything that's in color. So what you'd see, everything that's in color, that would be printed on high quality paper, and we get the best deal when we order 1,000 in bulk. That cost is approximately $500, and that's just for the certificate itself. The folders are an additional $800, and that's the lowest cost option that we could find. So the total for something like this would be $1,300 for 1,000 certificates. We don't anticipate, a large cost. We're actually just printing the chairperson's name, the information about the person or the organization that's receiving the certificate. That's something that can be printed within the graphics department within a matter of minutes, actually. So the cost, just so you're aware, is $1,300 for 1,000, and that's the design. As mentioned, this is an informational item. You wanted to know what it would look like, how much it would cost, and Commissioner Gregorian, this would be something that you could request. If you have, today we're at a commission meeting, you could let the commission staff, Yvonne know tomorrow night there's a exhibition opening. I'd like, a certificate for this person with this date and this location, and we could produce this document. So this is something that would be commission issued. The commissioners could directly request it from city staff and pick it up in a matter of a couple of days. We just ask, if you could give us 2 days notice, just in case if there's a problem, we can get back to you. But it's simple enough that we could do at the office, and it's to be flexible enough for all the different events, exhibitions, types of artists, and types of recognitions that you're anticipating. So in addition, with a lot of other items, this will come back as part of the work plan, so we can discuss it and find out, how much money we have, and if this is something that you can implement quickly, and that's within the budget.
Any questions? Next item.
Item 6, commission staff comments.
I guess
Any comments?
I'll start. First off, I want to thank my colleagues, staff, for making I think that was my third run as chair, an enjoyable one. We got a lot of work done. It was fun. And again, I'm so glad to be on this commission with these specific people because they're also cordial and just fun to be around and helpful and so forth. I'm very comfortable with all of you. The other item I wanted to mention was that this Friday and Saturday, the Lark Musical Society is presenting it's Gilbert and Sullivan's Mikado at the Ambassador Auditorium in Pasadena. That's on Friday and Saturday. I believe the showtime is at 7 or 8. I don't entirely remember. But you can go to their website and to Lark Musical Society. So that's going to sum it up for me. Thank you.
Commissioner Gregorian?
Yeah, I highly recommend our viewers to go to this Mikado event. However, I recommend them to go on Friday because on Saturday, our Alex Theater here has an incredible performance by world-renowned trumpetist Arturo Sandoval and his group. I'm very excited. I'm going there with a group of friends, and I hope everybody will be there. It is an opportunity not to be missed. So we have a lot of really good events in Glendale, and with some organizations in Glendale, and there are so many. The list is so long. I'm not going to make all of them, but I just want to mention one thing, which is. One of our lifetime achievement awardee has an exhibition and an exhibit of her paintings on Friday, January 25th, which is a week tomorrow, at 7:30 in the AGBU AYA Nazarian Center in Canoga Park. So Sirun Yeretzian is going to have her work exhibited there, and there are a lot of, incredibly nice, diverse paintings, and there is going to be her present. They are going to present her with a couple of experts. It's going to be a really nice reception. So again, Friday, January 25th at 7:30 p.m. at the Nazarian Center, AGBU AYA Nazarian Center at Oakdale Avenue, 6844 Oakdale Avenue in Canoga Park. And again, don't forget Mikado and Arturo Sandoval. That's it.
Commissioner Lee?
Since our next meeting will be in the middle of February, I want to wish everybody a happy Lunar New Year, which is going to happen on February the 10th.
I want to give a quick update about the Museum of Neon Art, who they do plan to attend one of our meetings here in the coming months and give us a greater update, but they're really focused this year on fundraising. They'll be having some events this spring, another cruise as a fundraising event, and we wish them the best of luck and looking forward to having them come forth and give us some updates about that, and looking forward to having them here in the city of Glendale, hopefully in the near future. And their website for updates about things as well at the neonmona.org, for those that would like to check that out. And just generally, I just want to comment that I greatly appreciate the commissioners and the staff with which we are working. I think we've done, again, some remarkable work this year through a lot of change, and I think there's really a lot to be excited and proud about moving forward. And I think that everybody here has such a passionate view that is truly from the heart and is truly thinking about what is the best for Glendale and what is the best for our organizations and our creative businesses and our artists. And I just am quite honored to be sitting up here with all of you, and regardless of what happens in April as well, I know we'll continue to work hard over the next couple of months, and hopefully we'll continue to see some familiar faces and new faces in the future that will continue this path that we're on to bettering the world of arts and culture in Glendale. Sorry.
I just wanted to remind the commission, so the special meeting that was tentatively scheduled for January 31st is going to be rescheduled to February 14th in the morning. So after I get confirmation from Commissioner Derhove and Estienne, I will send an update to all the commissioners. So as of right now, it's February 14th at 10 a.m. And I will confirm hopefully by week's end, if not early next week. And we will still have a meeting February, so we'll be very busy in February, but it's going to be to finalize some of these plans.
And then you'll also look into the date for the city council after that, right?
Yes, so the city council meeting, I think, is tentatively, as I mentioned, either February 5th or 12th, depending on their agenda, their forecast agenda. So I will confirm that, and then the 14th is when we would have our special meeting.
Should we be waiting the special meeting to? Is that discussing the what plan? I mean the strategic plan. We just approved the strategic plan to introduce to them on that date.
You approved the arts and cultural plan with all of the changes, so that's what's going to be presented to the city council in early February, and then when we meet for a special meeting, that special meeting is going to be dedicated to discussing the work plan, and then our regular meeting will finalize that discussion, and then some of these other straggling items that have been following along, we will bring it back and approve, and then we'll have March to discuss some of these other issues before there's a potential change-up.
Next item.
Item 7, written communications.
And we have none. We are adjourned.